Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Philippine Startup Week 2021. This is the country's largest scale collaborative initiative showcasing the Filipino startup community created through the collaboration of the Department of Science and Technology, the Department of Trade and Industry, the Department of Information and Communications Technology, and the QBO Innovation Hub, together with the Philippine startup community. This nationwide conference will highlight the Philippine startup ecosystem as an engine for recovery and long term growth post pandemic. This will be a perfect outlet for the TTUSO-LAUIN office to market and commercialize the technology transfer of the Bulacan State University, as well as to invite and aspire university researchers and faculty members to continue the process of technology transfer and commercialization of their technologies. This event aims to further educate the university researchers when it comes to market exploration, marketability, and commerciality of the university researches and technologies. We also want to discuss licensing, spin off licensing, and commercialization of protected technologies to external partners and end users, and for the establishment of their own spin off companies. Let's start with the introduction of our keynote speaker for the program, Dr. Nestor Michael C. Tiglao. Dr. Nestor Tiglao is a co-founder and CEO of AdaptSense Technologies Incorporated, an Internet of Things design and consultant company. He finished his BS and MS in Electrical Engineering from the University of the Philippines, Diliman, and obtained his PhD in Electrical and Computer Engineering from Instituto Superior Técnico in Lisbon, Portugal. Currently, Dr. Nestor is a full-time professor at the Electrical and Electronics Engineering Institute in UP Diliman and a registered electrical engineer. He is also a senior member of the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. As a scientist and researcher, Dr. Nestor has written more than 60 peer-reviewed publications on Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and ICT. He has achieved Scientist 2 rank in the UP Scientific Productivity System. Let us welcome Dr. Nestor Tiglao from the AdaptSense and UP Diliman. Hi, Dr. Nestor. How are you, sir?
Doing good. Thank you, Jerome.
Sir, we'll be seeing you in a little while, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. So, Dr. Nestor will be discussing the licensing, spin off licensing, and commercialization of protected technologies and external partners and end users, and for the establishment of a spin off company. So, next up, we will be introducing Dr. Proceso Fernandez Jr. from the Ateneo de Manila University. Dr. Proceso Fernandez Jr., or Dr. John, is the director of the Technology Management Office of the Ateneo de Manila University and the director of the Ateneo Intellectual Property Office. He finished his PhD in computer science in the Ateneo de Manila University, and he is also has a research interest in theoretical computer science, algorithms, data mining, and flash codes. Let us all welcome Dr. John Fernandez from the Ateneo de Manila University. Hello, Dr. John. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jerome. Good afternoon to everyone.
Hello, sir. How are you today, sir?
I'm good.
Sir.
Thanks, Jerome.
Yes, sir. So we'll be seeing you in a little while, sir, in our panel discussion, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So next, let's all welcome. We will be introducing Mr. Stephen Fernando, the assistant professor from MSU IIT from Northern Mindanao, Philippines. Mr. Stephen is a graduate on Techno and Innovation in Singapore. His interests includes but are not limited to startups, marketing, management, research, and business operations. He is a faculty for 8 years prior to studying his master's in technopreneurship and innovation in Singapore, becoming a national finalist in the Agora Youth Awards, a search for outstanding marketing students, and graduated with cum laude honors. He has served as Assistant Dean in the College of Business Administration and Accountancy, in MSU Iligan Institute of Technology and is now an assistant professor in the marketing department, CBAA, in the MSU Iligan Institute of Technology. Let us all welcome Mr. Stephen Fajardo from the MSU IIT. Good afternoon, Sir Stephen.
Good afternoon, Jerome,
Hi,
and
sir.
thank you
How
for
are you,
inviting us.
sir, today?
Doing well. Yeah,
Thank you, sir, for gracing this event with us. Taking the time, sir.
thank
We'll be
you as
seeing you, sir,
well.
in our panel discussions later, sir.
Sure, sure. Thank you.
Salamat po. So now let us proceed to our the meat of our discussion with our keynote speaker, Dr. Nestor Michael Tiglao, the CEO of AdaptSense Technologies Incorporated. Let's all welcome Dr. Nestor Tiglao. Sir, you may take the floor.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction, Jerome. Okay, so let me just pull up my slides. For this talk, I'd like to focus more on what technology transfer is, how it impacts the society, and then next I will delve more into about how to think innovatively and how that impacts the ability of a startup or a spin-off to successfully enter the market. And I've seen in my research and in also in my limited experience at this point, there are ways to think about this, and there are practices that allow us to be successful in technology transfer and commercialization. So technology transfer is a concept that originated from the University of Wisconsin in 1925. So it's a fairly new uh, concept. But what I found out is that it was nurtured and refined in Israel. And we know that Israel is a very innovative country. It's actually called the startup nation. And what happened was that when they knew about this concept, they set up institutes, research and development institutes that actively involve themselves in technology transfer and commercialization. One is the Weizmann Institute of Science, where they have the Research and Development Company, established in 1959. The second one is Hebrew University of Jerusalem, where they have a unit called the Yisum Research and Development Company in 1964. These companies are embedded in the university, and their role is to focus on technology transfer, commercialization, and the creation of spin-offs and also licensing. If you look at their performance for Weizmann Institute, 2,000 patent families and 73 spin-offs created uh, since they were established. In USUM, they have 10,000 patents uh, and 900 licenses and 25 spin-offs. So this to me is really impressive in terms of how they successfully conducted technology transfer. And what underlines this is the critical role of technology transfer offices like what the Bulacan State University TTO is doing. They have two main roles, and number one is to protect intellectual property, and secondly, and I would say more importantly, uh, facilitate the free transfer of ideas and opportunities between the academe and the outside world. The outside world being composed of entrepreneurs, investors, industries, and communities. I mention this because I look at our situation in the Philippines, and what I see is that the free transfer of these ideas and opportunities uh, doesn't happen. It's very difficult to you know to share ideas, to collaborate. So hopefully, if there's anything that you can get out of this talk, it's really to be open to discussions, not only within your group, within your research group, within your department, or within your university, but more importantly, with the outside world, because that's where your intellectual property, your products and services will have to be diffused and shared with the rest of society so that it will impact the whole society. Now, spin-offs and commercialization. When you say spin-off, these are actually companies that are established as a result of R&D conducted in university. So, to be called a spin-off, the parent organization has to be a university or an academic institution. The spin-off has to be a separate legal entity. So it's an established company, not an extension or controlled body of the university. The spin-off has to knowledge produced from academic activities or academic pursuits. And then lastly, the spin-off should be aimed at profit generation and commercialization of technology. So although there are technologies that we develop for the for social good to benefit the society, still for these companies to operate, there should be some kind of a profit generation to sustain the operation and the further development and improvement of the technology. And this critical because uh, when you think or when you want to establish your own spin of a or startup, you have to think about not only about the technology itself, but how do you actually set up, run, and manage the company so that you can sustain its operation. So why do we need a university spin-off in the first place? And there are three good reasons which I think we should think about and we should spend some time uh, uh, realizing or appreciating. Number one is that spin-offs are enablers of economic development. There has been a lot of papers and results in literature where spin-offs created jobs, okay, by translating their research into commercially viable ventures and enterprises. And once you set up all these spin-offs, there will be a multiplier effect on the local economic activity because there will be other people benefiting from it and there will be more economic activity. And secondly, we need spin-offs because by its nature, um, inventions or innovations within the university, some of them are have very high uncertainty. You don't really know where if they will become commercially viable or commercially successful. Okay? And then secondly, the inventor's involvement uh, in the subsequent development of the university technology is very critical because they have tacit knowledge about the technology. Uh, Now, it takes a lot. There's a lot of improvement that you need to do, a lot of effort that you need to do to bring your technology or your research from the lab to the market. And this is something that I realized in my personal experience. So the university now supports this by actively supporting the commercialization by providing resources to the researcher, to the professor, and even to the students within the university. Because I've seen it in the case of Singapore, where they actually uh, support their students who graduate from their programs and allow them to establish their own spin-off, like the one being done in NUS. And thirdly, and I think this this is very important for professors and researchers like myself, and because this also requires a mindset change when the university uh, supports spin-off and commercialization. There's really sometimes you encounter a lot of resistance because it's something new and there will be changes in the organization. There will be a lot of negotiation in terms of faculty loading, focus, what kind of resources will be made available, and so on. But university spin-offs actually support the mission of teaching, research, and community engagement. Well, number one, because it attracts and retains your good faculty. So those your faculty who are very productive in research, if you support them and make the research uh, commercially viable, you will retain them and you will attract even more faculty to join the research uh, team or research project. And secondly, spin-offs, because they are uh, involved in improving technology further, will actually improve the quality and the relevance of your R&D. This is very important because you want your R&D to be relevant, to benefit the society. So if you engage in spinning it off or licensing it, then you will have to improve it, make it better. And later I will show you that 20% improvement over what's existing is not enough. It has to be really groundbreaking. It has to be 10 times better than what you see in the market or what you currently see, because that's the only way for you to enter the market with a commercially viable solution. So it involves innovative thinking. And innovative thinking is just the ability to come up with new ideas and novel approaches to problems. So I have a question for you. What does Amazon, Netflix, and Apple have in common? Well, yes, they are startups, uh, very successful. Uh, they came out of Silicon Valley. But what what's common about these companies is that they actually disrupted the market in their particular segment. So Amazon disrupted uh, the library by making books available, and even right now it's engaged in shopping and online commerce. Netflix, um, you'll see here, actually disrupted the video market. Blockbuster eventually went bankrupt when Netflix uh, uh, provided their service and scaled up. And then, of course, Apple is doing a lot of disruptive technology. Uh, Before they started the PC business, and they went to the smartphone business. So this is what happens when companies and spin-offs are able to successfully disrupt the market. Other uh, companies will eventually uh, fold up because they will be replaced unless they continue to innovate. Of course, the companies like Blockbuster didn't set up their business, and they didn't plan to go bankrupt, right? But it happened. Okay? So my question is, how do you ensure? So even before you do a spin-off in a startup, how will you go about thinking how to start it, and how will you continue to be successful in your innovation journey? So it's really about changing the world. Although a lot of it comes after the fact when you already disrupted the market and you're already a unicorn, which is a company or spin-off with at least $1 billion in valuation. What Professor Shlomo Maital, that I quoted here, he said that, and he was referring to Israeli startups and spin-offs, specifically those coming from Technion, which is the Israel Institute of Technology. He said that there are three components that play a big part in successful startups. Number one is aspiration. It's about aiming high and tackling hard problems. Okay. So it's not enough to just, I can solve this small problem and then I'm confident that I can do this. I don't want to fail too much. I don't want the risk. then I will just aim for this, not very high. But these companies actually aspire and aim very high. Secondly, they have inspiration. They practice extreme out of the box thinking. Okay? And I will show you later something that I discovered, a way of thinking about problems. Okay? Then lastly, of course, this perspiration, doing all the hard work. Because sometimes you come up with a great idea, you have a mountaintop experience, but then when you see that it will take, realize that it will take a lot of effort, a lot of work, a lot of years, okay, of trying and failing, okay, then you are not encouraged to do it anymore. So you really need aspiration, inspiration, and perspiration to succeed. And what I saw and looking at how um, how our technologies are being offered to the market, there are two ways. You can push it into the market, a technology push, or you can ask the market what it needs and you have a market pull. Okay, but what I've seen is that, uh, quoting this University of Maryland research, that it's actually a bit of both. Uh, you have to have a double linking between technology push and market push. And when you have this, you have a very strong venture potential. So it's a way of thinking, um, are we just pushing a technology because we can build it? Uh, or do we know that there's actually a market out there needing our products and services based on our technology? So in this dynamic, the market informs the innovations, and in turn, the innovations will inform the market what's possible, what's available. So for those who are new to starting up and spinning off, there are 7 critical questions that I think are very important. And this is from Zero to One of Peter Thiel. First one is the engineering question. Can you create a breakthrough technology instead of just incremental improvement? So as I mentioned, 20% is not enough. Make it 10x. Second one is the timing question. Is now the right time to start your particular business? Is there a need out there? Then, if there is a need, you have to think about the monopoly question. Are you starting with a big share of a small market? Because even if there's a big market and you say, I just want 1% of a $1 billion market, there are already big companies in that playing field. Even that 1% will really, if you take that 1%, it will really entail a huge amount of effort, uh, and investment on your part. So it's, according to Peter Thiel, it's better to start with a big share of a small market and then just focus on a particular market segment. And you know that you have users there with real needs who need your technology. Then the people question. This is very important because sometimes as founders, and as researchers, we tend to think that we don't need other people in the team, that it's enough to just have a grip on the technology. But we actually need other people. You have to build the right team. So you need people who will manage the company on a day-to-day basis. You need developers. You need engineers, scientists. You need marketing people. You need sales. So the lifeblood of a company is actually sales. So if you don't have this, you won't last long in the market. And then you have to think about the distribution question. Do you have a way to not just create, meaning manufacture, but also to deliver your product? Okay? What are your channels? The durability question will answer, will your market position be defensible in 10 to 20 years in the future? Because the goal of a spin-off or startup is for you to grow quickly. You're designed to scale in such a way that by year 7, the goal is for you to have an IPO or to have a very high valuation. So think about how the company will grow uh, in the next year, next 3 years, 5 years, and 7th year. Will you still be there? Will you still be relevant? Okay. And then lastly, the secret question: have you identified a unique opportunity that others don't see? And of course, when I started my own uh, spin-off, I did not ask all these questions. And in hindsight, I should have done all this questioning because it will benefit you. You have to prepare. As they say, uh, failing to plan, is planning to fail. And there are three stages in a company or a startup. First is you have a problem solution fit. Okay, so you find a problem that is worth solving. So you are now in the problem space, and then you see if your technology actually answers that problem. Okay, so the innovation is actually in the solution space, um, and you have to discover a viable solution by not just thinking about it within your lab, but actually talking to people, talking to potential customers, and even creating a demo of your system to show how it will solve their problem. Okay. And then, so now once you set up the company, you will now, and then you're confident that there will be customers willing to pay, interested in your product. You go into a product market fit and you validate the customer. So this is the most important stage because this is where you validate your product and your business. Okay? So it's not just about the technology anymore. It's about the product and how you deliver the product and create a business out of it. Okay? And then, as I mentioned, spin-offs and startups are designed to scale. So the third phase is to create and acquire more and more customers, and then you focus on growth. Okay? So is there a winning innovation strategy in the face of already entrenched incumbents? So meron ng people who are or companies providing that same service or a similar service, and you come in here, you have a similar service. It's difficult to fight these incumbents head to head. Okay? Because once they are already established, they have the capital, they have access to networks, they will do sustaining innovations. They will continue to innovate and sustain their product line. Okay. Now, to disrupt this, uh, and Professor Clayton Christensen said, to have a disruptive innovation, it's enough for you to start with a product that is not good enough, not yet good enough, but actually, since you already identified the customers who are willing to use it, then you come from below here. Okay. And then, as you can see, this red line is the performance that customers can use because they only have, they're only looking for a specific set of features that they will use. So for the other customers, it could be just a few features. For other customers, it could be a lot of features. But if you identify these customers, you will know what features they want. So, for example, if it's a smartphone, they want a smartphone that can play a video. They have, for example, 32 gigabytes of memory, and then can play YouTube and social networks. That's enough for them. You don't need to put very expensive sensors or other things. So you come from below and then continue to improve. Okay? Okay. And this is where new competitors will win because you have you're providing a performance at a cost that is very acceptable to your customers. Okay? And then over time, you will improve and innovate on that technology. So here's the part where I want to share the timeline uh, smart surface, something that I worked on since 2015 when we did research with my undergraduate advisee. So we actually filed the patent. We had a lab prototype in 2015, and then of course I realized that it's not just technology, but I also have to know about how to innovate successfully. I need tools uh, to run the company and to look at other aspects beyond technology. So, for example, how do you form a team? How do you get support from partners and investors? How do you run the company? You need sales and marketing and so on. So that's so 2016 was a pre-commercialization phase. In 2017, we had a prototype already, and then we pitched it to an international convention of invention and incorporated the company. And then in 2019, we got funding to validate the market. 2020, which was last year, we came up with an improved version. As you can see, this took a very long time. To me, it could have been shortened if I did more of the thinking at the initial phase in terms of how to uh, innovate and and shepherd the startup and the spin-off so that it will quickly grow. So here's our some activities that we did uh, when we showed it in the National Science and Technology Week. And as you can see, there's a prototype there. They like it, children like it, parents like it. But of course, that was a prototype. When we look at who are the real people who will buy this, okay, it was a entirely different question. And then how do we build it? How do we source the materials? What is the price point? And how do we continue innovating? These are valid questions that we ask after this. And so in in 2019, okay, we since we already have a company um, here, we talk to potential customers. So those in the, for example, companies who are in advertising and also in schools, like this one in this picture below. We uh, tested the product in the Philippine School for the Deaf and see if an interactive surface projection that you can install on a flat surface like a wooden board is actually something that will be useful to them. And we have this prototype, and we talk to a lot of the players in the market. And what I found out is that they have very different needs that I did not, that we in the team and myself did not think of. For example, in the Play Lab, they want it to be very large installations. For example, the size of a movie screen. And some they want it to be battery powered, so without the wires, which is tough because we initially we had wired running all over to connect our sensors in the system. So when we did the market validation, what the customers actually need are higher accuracy and responsiveness, large projection surface. They want multi-touch gestures, which we did not support at that time. And then we looked at also our limitation of our current technology. We saw that, and we realized that it's highly dependent on the type of surface. It was limited in the projection size, and multi-touch was quite difficult. So now we are facing all these technical challenges. So my question is, could we have done it better by forward thinking and then thinking when I mentioned you think about how your company will innovate, um, not only the next year but 3 years from now, 5 years from now, and 7 years from now. So the lessons that I learned is that we really have to know whether we're just doing technology push versus a market pull. Okay. And then number two, we have to build something that actually people want. Okay, so putting the customer first, not the technology or the product first. So it should not be the other way around. But when you talk about customers, it's not just a vague customers, customer like general, for example, elementary school children. Okay, that's very vague. When you target a particular customer segment or a demographic, you have to look at their jobs to be done. What do they want to do that they think will be solved by your technology or your product or your service? So early on, if you identify what these jobs to be done are, then you will have a higher chance of success because that's what they want. They are willing to pay for it. Okay. And then number three is to have a strong management team. There's a saying that partners, investors, people who are active in the startup and spin-off, they bet on the jockey, not the horse. So the jockey here would be your idea, your startup idea, or your technology. But they actually look at the uh, I mean the horse is the idea, sorry, and the jockey is the team that runs the spin-off or startup. So they bet on the jockey and not on the horse. So now let me focus on innovative thinking. Okay, and this can be applied to anything that you are experiencing right now in terms of challenges. Like I mentioned in the smart surface, we had a problem with the accuracy and the projection side. Okay, so how do we solve that problem? Okay, so my question is, where do you focus your energy, your innovative and creative um, energy to solve a particular problem or to solve a customer's problem? So here's an example. If you think of your product or service as a value chain, A to F, and each one, for example, this could be a particular component in the process, you have an efficiency level, efficiency report. And usually uh, in the industry or in the manufacturing sector, efficiency is the amount of time that you use a particular machine. Okay, so here, given A, B, up to F, where will you focus most of your attention to get the most performance out of your system? And then secondly, where will you avoid putting any attention because you have a limited amount of energy and brain power? Where will you focus your attention and which ones will you avoid putting any attention? Okay, right. So think for a moment. Right. So do you have the letter now? A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay. To answer the first question, where will you focus most of your attention? Okay. And then where? Then secondly, where will you avoid putting any attention? So you have to have two letters. Okay. Okay, so hold on to those two. Okay. Now you got another report. Okay. And this one is your maximum capacity report. Okay. Now the number here below indicates the maximum transactions per hour or throughput per hour of your machine. Okay. So take a look at the value. Okay. So the if you answered in the first in the previous slide that you will focus your attention on process B. Okay. What will be the consequences if you focus primarily on optimizing process B because it had the lowest efficiency? So as you can see here, its capacity is 16 transactions per hour. Okay. It's actually the highest. Okay. Although it's not, it has the lowest efficiency. It's not used 100% all the time, but it produces the highest throughput. Okay. Um, okay. So the efficiency report in the previous slides remained the same. Okay. It was equally accurate before and after receiving this new report. But what changed here? Are you changing now where you will focus your attention? And in fact, you will because if you look at process D, which had the highest efficiency in the previous slide, now it has the lowest capacity. So therefore, if you think of this as a assembly line, okay, process D will be your weakest link, right? You have to put your attention on process D. Okay. So in this case, process D is the constraint of the system. So simply improving the throughput of process D, if you increase its throughput or capacity, you will improve immensely the throughput of your system. So as you can see, the global optimum or the condition that will solve your problem is not just to focus, it's not to focus on process B actually, but to focus on optimizing process D. So this is um, a result of the kind of thinking produced by the theory of constraints. And it was developed by um, Eliyahu Goldratt. Okay? And basically, it answers three questions when you're trying to innovate something or to solve a particular problem. Number one question is what to change. Okay, so you have a lot of problems, you have a lot of things that you can put your attention to. How do you prioritize? Which one do you change? Okay. And then secondly, once you identified that constraint, the second question is what to change to. What are your goals? So the goals has to be clear. Okay. So if your company is there to, for example, if your goal is to maximize your profit or maximize your revenue, then that's the goal. It could be. Or if you, for example, in a more technical sense, for example, if I'm uh, running a cloud computing company and I develop the technology behind that company, maybe my goal is to increase or maximize the throughput. Okay, and then reduce, for example, reduce the chance of buffering, for example, in YouTube, for example, in the early days, diba? If you recall, when you access a video, and during that time, bandwidth was very expensive, you'll see buffering, and you are just waiting. Okay, but if you look at Netflix now, once it starts, there will be sometimes when you have very low bandwidth or very congested network, it will initially load. Okay, um, there's a percent loading, but once it starts, usually you continue to watch the whole episode with very good performance, and they design their system to be adaptive to, to from low bandwidth to very high bandwidth. So the question is, what are your goals in innovation? And then lastly, how to cause that change. What are your objectives and plans to cause that change so that you will um, going back to the constraint. Here's a focusing steps here. Number one, you identify the constraint because it's limiting your performance. You exploit that constraint, okay? Meaning you address it, okay? You solve it, you improve on it, and then number three is you subordinate everything else to that constraint. So since everything is helping feed and solve that problem, that constraint, then you subordinate everything. And then number four, you elevate the constraint so that it doesn't become a liability, but it becomes an asset. Okay. So for example, in process D, if you increase its throughput to, for example, 16, it doesn't become the bottleneck anymore. It actually becomes an asset, and there will be another process that will become the constraint. Okay. So step five says, don't stop. Find your next constraint and improve that constraint. So this is the focusing step of theory of constraint, which is to me, very good because it allows you to focus your your resources, your attention. And by the way, I did not know about this when I started spinning off and commercialization a number of years ago. Okay. So, and this, when you apply the theory of constraints, this leads to what is now called constraint innovation. And what's the result? In the literature, there's a lot of results. When they applied, these are big companies. They look at how when they applied theory of constraints, what was the effect, overall effect. So as you can see, these are impressive numbers. Here, on-time delivery increase of 60%, revenue increase 68%, profit increase 82%. At the same time, they have reported a reduction in inventory by 50%, and the cycle time a reduction of 66%. Okay, and these are big companies that have documented the effect of uh, applying constraint innovation. And in fact, in Israel, both military and commercial companies apply TOC, or theory of constraints. In the US also, the military, they use this kind of constraint innovation. So going back to our backyard. So the question is, what are the constraints when you have a R&D project? Traditionally, the constraints are budget and risk. So the funder will say this is your maximum budget, and they will analyze your project based on risk. Can you actually build it in, or can you actually uh, uh, complete the project? So this traditionally is how it's being done. But studies have shown that it's actually better to identify and set outcome constraints and time frame constraints. Outcomes meaning what's the overall effect of that R&D innovation, of the technology that you want to commercialize. Okay. So, and what is the time frame for you to be able to deliver that? So it's not just the budget. The budget can be the same, can be still very low, because we always think as researchers we always need more budget, more funding. But if you think about it, even if the budget is the same, we can think about how to set, or how to think about the outcome and the time frame. So, for example, this COVID-19 pandemic is a very good example, because when the pandemic started and every a lot of the countries were locking down, guess what? The pharmaceutical companies had a problem. How do we innovate quickly? And the outcome is to build the vaccines, make it available, and the time frame is as soon as possible. Okay, so when they thought about it that way, you see that there's been a tremendous innovation coming out in very unprecedented ways, because vaccine research usually takes 10 to 20 years. Okay. Now the vaccines came out, and they're even producing a lot more in less than a year or so, and with very tight budget. Okay. Another case study that I also want to mention is the DARPA Grand Challenge, and I think it's closer to my heart, because this is they use uh, a lot of computing innovation. They use machine learning and AI. Actually, this one started the research and development on autonomous vehicles. So in 2001, what was the impetus? In 2001, the U.S. Congress said that our military should have by 2015. So this was 2001. By 2015, the goal or the outcome was they want the military to have at least 30% or 33%, one third of their ground vehicles to be completely autonomous. Okay? So how do you do that? Okay? How do you quickly innovate? Okay? With very limited budget and very short timeline. So what happened was that in 2004, okay, very short span of time, they tested the autonomous vehicles of big universities working with a lot of car companies, in the Mojave Desert. Okay, 200 240 kilometer stretch. Okay, guess what? Zero finishers. Okay, so they did not finish. Okay, but that was 3 years when they started the the goal of having autonomous vehicles. Now in 2005, just 1 year after that, it was more complex. They had a 212-kilometer uh, target. There were five finishers who finished the 212 kilometers, and uh, and what they saw was that of all those who entered, maybe more than 10 or 10 to 20 competitors, except one, all of them were able to go beyond what was achieved in 2004. Okay, so I think in 2004 it was just uh, 11 kilometers or 11 to 20 kilometers, and all the vehicles stopped or stalled. But now in just 1 year, all of them except one was able to surpass that, but only five finished. In 2007, it was very complex because the autonomous vehicles have to, number one, follow uh, traffic rules and regulations. Yeah, that has to identify that and also merge with normal traffic, normal cars, as well as other autonomous vehicles. So it's extremely challenging. Okay? And what they were able to achieve this. Okay? So a group from CMU, uh, you can search this on the internet. They were able to do this. Of course, they partnered um, with big companies, car companies. And in 2007, what was the computers then? Uh, these were Pentium class computers. Okay, if you look at the cell phone technology during this time, it was very primitive compared to what we have now. Okay? But they were able to do it and under extreme constraints. Okay, so um, so th- so all in all, what I can say is that thinking about constraints actually allows us, forces us to become more innovative. Okay? So even if, for example, and talking about how we do research, even in my own group, usually the constraints are the last things that we think about. We and usually it's either a budget or current technology. But these should not be the constraints because we have to look at uh, in the current state of our research, what is it that's causing you to underperform or not produce your result towards your goal. So here's a inspiration from 37 signals, and they said that instead of freaking out about all these constraints, embrace them, let them guide you. Constraints drive innovation and force focus. Instead of trying to remove them, use them to your advantage. So I think this is a very good lesson, and for those who want to succeed in innovation and who have the dreams of making a big impact in society using your research and your technology and your innovation and invention, think about how you can leverage constraints to come up with better and better technology. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Nestor Tiglao, for that very inspiring and meaningful discussion on the startups and on how the discussion on licensing, spin-off licensing, and commercialization of protected technologies to external partners and end users. And of course, the establishment of a spin-off company. Of course, I think what I've learned and what I've picked up there is the lessons on technology push and market pull, and have a strong management team. Bet on the jockey, not the horse, no sir. So at this point, we will be having the panel discussion. Of course, we have introduced our panel a while ago. Mr. Stephen Fajardo from MSU IIT, Dr. John Fernandez from Ateneo de Manila University, and we will be having another um, panelist from our own Bulacan State University, Mr. Eros Lumage. So, as an introduction, Mr. Eros has 10 years of academic experience as a professor and instructor in the Bulacan State University as a program chair in BS Entrepreneurship and also a project staff in DOST Bulacan State University, LAUIN Technology Transfer since January 2021. He is also connected as a project staff in DOST Bulacan State University Baras TBI since February 2019 to December 2020. He is also an instructor in the Bulacan State University since July 2012 up to present and has developed and delivered lectures on business analytics, business process outsourcing, and total quality management. So let us all welcome Mr. Eros Lumage from our very own Bulacan State University, Lawin Technology Transfer Office. Hi, Sir Eros. Good afternoon, sir.
Hi, Jerome, and hi po, Sir Stephen, and hi po, Sir John. Thank you for gracing us this afternoon. No? Salamat po sa pagpa-unlock sa invitation po namin.
So here are panelists, sir, for our panel discussion today. They will be sharing their success stories and also will be answering some questions regarding the resource speaker and the discussion on the commercialization and spin-off licensing. We will also be joined by our keynote speaker, Dr. Nestor Tiglao, as he also answers some of questions that is also connected to his discussion a while ago. Okay, so without further ado, um, any of you sirs can answer our first question. So our first question, sir, is what are your pain points in obtaining a licensing agreement or is in establishing spin-off companies? Any of you, sir? Siguro, sir, let's start with Sir John.
Okay, thank you, Jerome. Again, good afternoon to everyone, to the audience, and to my co-panelists. A pleasant afternoon to everyone. Uh, our office is actually quite young. We were established 2 years ago. And from the past 2 years, I guess the first main pain point was before we can actually commercialize anything, we'll have to have a clear policy on IP ownership. No, so once that hurdle was addressed, then sort of a big chunk of the problem becomes was solved, and it becomes more manageable. Without the IP policy, it becomes parang sort of a guessing game between the admin, among the researchers, and even the third party who want to collaborate with the university. So that's the first pain point. We had to make sure that we had a very clear policy, and afterwards, maybe another pain point was initially the researchers were not so willing to participate, collaborate with us. No, we're a new entity in a sense. No, and researchers would rather mind their own work. They're doing their own research. No, and I think for that, what helped was we invited them to discuss over lunch or over snack, so that there's an incentive for food. So it's not only parang in a sense, there's also a clear win for them. No? Although baka sabihin mo medyo wow, but it's really something that's working. No? And then another hurdle. So after we have the IP policy, after we got the researchers to actually collaborate, to opt in, essentially, the third pain point that we had to hurdle was the development of an actual licensing agreement. This is a legal document. that has to consider many factors. Um, so as you can imagine, because it's a legal document, has to involve legal experts. No? So at that time, we didn't have our own lawyers. No? Right now, we have some retainer lawyers, but at that time, we had to course all of our law-related or legal questions to an office, which acts as a liaison only to an external party, an external firm. No? So the university at that time didn't have its own law firm, law office, no, or law department. So we had to connect to, I guess, to couple of jump points before we actually reach the lawyers. And usually, the turnaround time for resolving law-related issues is quite long. No? Parang at the minimum, they'll get back to us maybe 2 to 3 weeks after we pose some questions, and then they will throw back the answers to us, and then we have further questions, so on. So the process of developing our very own first licensing agreement actually took about a year. So it was very time consuming. No? Pero after the first one, I think, and many of you probably would share the same experience. After the first one, parang it's a learning experience. After that first one, you can use that as a template. So you'll only have to tweak very few items of the licensing agreement, and therefore it becomes much easier now. I guess if I want to identify the top three parang pain points at the start of our operations, that would be the three things. So parang clarity on IP, and then the opt-in of the researchers, and then the parang first legal actual tech licensing agreement that we had to formulate. No? There are a few others, but I would like to parang give chance to the others. Then. Sige, salamat, Jerome.
Thank you, sir. No, maybe, sir, some of your pain points can be also shared by the others, sir. Since all of us have experienced being a startup technology transfer office as well. So let's move on, sir, to Assistant Professor Stephen Fajardo of MSU IIT. Sir Stephen,
Thanks, Jerome.
good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon din. In connection with John, yun, closely the same, but although yung technology transfer policy namin, medyo at least established na siya, but if I would think on like pain points, or to make it lighter na lang, siguro, learning points na lang namin para hindi siya masyadong painful, is that initially, we are still selling out, or I think most of the institutions are still selling out the idea of connecting yung sa researchers or developed IP to a particular industry. So I think yung critical aspect is how do we encourage or invite all of the researchers that your technologies can be lifted out rather from the laboratory and can go to the market. So we have to find ways on how to convince all of them that it's okay to try and go forward with it. So along that line, we have to constantly engage the team, ask them to come up with a lobby with inventors. So that is the first one. Siguro ang next is, once we have this particular licensor already, preparation is really, really tedious. Like, if you need to meet internally, the team or the technology transfer team or the office really have to meet like twice or once a week for a whole day just to deliberate on possible term sheets, possible agreements. Tapos, along that line, we tend to argue and agree and argue and agree. So, normal na yata yun, di ba, sir? Mga sir na magre-raise yung voices kasi hindi nagkaka-agree internally lang muna. And then the moment you have come up with that agreement, pagdating na sa like licensor ng company na magla-license, iba na naman yung recommendation. So you have to meet again and then come up with an agreement, and then finally coming up with a final decision na okay sa inventor, okay sa institute or sa school, and then okay din sa licensee. I think in our case, yun yung critical na aspect, buying out and then formalizing the agreement, and then eventually once na-meet mo na yung company, yung agreement proper na din, because after meeting there are still a lot of changes along the agreement line. So yung constant revision, I think if you don't get to learn from the previous, talagang you go back from step one kung anong mga changes, and then you learn from it until such time. Even now, we still argue a lot sa office kung paano. So normal yung tataas yung bosses, tapos parang the moment you go out, hindi na magiging friends. But the next day, you become friends again and start deliberating and arguing again. So yun yung normal na cases. Yeah, so but in that level, the one of the good points to learn is when an agreement is finally forged. Tapos parang it's parang a sigh of relief na finally nag-paid off yung efforts namin for a few months or a few weeks just to come up with an agreement at the brainstorm. And yeah, I mean, coming up with the success factor or success or champions rather, for us, importante yon. So at least we can motivate and encourage more inventors to go out of their shell and then share their technology for possible transfer. I think yun yung sa amin, Jerome.
Thank you, Sir Stephen, for sharing your learning points for us to learn from. No? So next po si Sir Eros from our very own Bulacan State University Lawin office. Sir, good afternoon, sir.
Yes. And I think, Jerome, alam mo yung mga isasagot ko dito, no? Kasi tayo,
Yes, po.
tayo, tayo magkasama dun sa process kung paano natin hinaharap yung technology transfer sa school natin, sa university natin. And we are fairly new in terms of technology transfer na nagsimula kami ng project from the impact project of the DOST this January. And we're still learning. We're still learning. We are still on the level na we want to gain trust to our university people, our researchers and inventors. We have yet to have a champion that really will push us to the level that we already have the high quality in terms of commercialization of our intellectual property. But in terms of learning points and pain points, no, talagang medyo marami din eh. Kahit sa simula pa lang ng technology transfer office namin sa Bulacan State University, nararamdaman na namin na we really need to have the people around na to be engaged talaga eh. Parang if the people are not yet engaged, people are not yet, kumbaga, already engaged or parang accepted the reality of the technology transfer in the university culture, hindi siya magtutuloy-tuloy. But luckily for us, there is the DOST Impact Project that helped us to establish our office. And now we are slowly building up in how to develop that culture in our university na, kumbaga, kasama na sa pag-uusap yung technology transfer. Like before, already research and extension, parating heavily doon lang yung pinag-uusapan na parating talking points sa university. But now, because of this opportunity na we share this kind of activities with the stakeholders of the university, nagiging isa na siya sa talking point ng university na, uy, meron palang technology transfer. Pwede pala natin gawin yun. And we thank you people na like you, Sir John, Sir Stephen, Sir Nestor, for always be kumbaga available for this kind of parang gathering na we share our thoughts on how we can be able to help in professors, inventors to really go into the technology transfer aspect of our job description. So, and ayun, sasabihin ko na mahirap siya. Sa ngayon, nararamdaman namin na mahirap siya. Hindi pa kami dumadating sa punto na nagla-license na talaga kami. So, totoo lang, gusto talaga naming matutunan yon. And then, nararamdaman ko yung sinasabi ni Sir John na pagdating sa legal aspect, yung sa simula, yun talaga isa sa problema. But I think with the help of the community, the Philippine Startup Week, we will be slowly building up. No? Jerome, baka may masabi ka konti, dagdag ka ng konti doon sa experience mo as a tech transfer officer ng Bulsu.
Yes po. Kasi as someone under Sir Eros's wing, kasi siya po yung head namin sa Technology Transfer Office ng Bulacan State University. I can attest po to the pain points na nasabi po ni Sir Eros. And of course, doon din po, I can connect to Sir Stephen and to Sir John na there is somewhat a difficulty din po when it comes to connecting with the researchers of the university because sometimes some of them are doing the research since this is new to them, the technology transfer and intellectual property patenting and licensing, they opt to do it all alone. So parang hindi po sila adept to connecting to us as a technology transfer office. So parang in layman's terms, parang sino ba sila? Sino ba yung tech transfer office para we connect to them. So in a way parang one of the pain points din po that I would like to share to the panel is paano ba namin i-reach out yung kamay namin to the researchers so that we can streamline the transfer of their technologies to be commercialized to the market. Parang yun po. Yun.
Thank you,
Salamat.
Jerome.
Yes, sir.
Biglang ako yung naging moderator eh. Jerome, sige.
And of course po, Dr. Nestor Tiglao, our keynote speaker. Any thoughts po, sir? And if you can share po your pain points when you were starting, sir, in a tech transfer officer. And also some thoughts, sir, regarding
Yeah, yes,
the...
yeah, sure, Jerome. I welcome the question kasi I'm on the other side of the fence because I, as innovator and as the technology generator, I was the one who coordinated with TTO, and on the other side, I was signing the licensing agreement. For me, personally, the pain point one was um, how, of course, we had an IP policy already in UP Diliman, but a lot of the provisions were untested, and we were going into uncharted territory in terms of, as a professor and as a researcher, what can I do, and what support can I get from the university? Because it will take time, it will take a lot of effort. So actually, the first one first dilemma was, um, can I spend more time on this and reduce my teaching load and research load? That's because you cannot set up a spin-off without spending time and forming the team and so on. So that was actually, I it was an uphill battle because the current state, the current thinking is that there's no, to me, there's no success story yet on commercialization. It's difficult. If you're the first one, you'll become the guinea pig. Uh, and then it's difficult to convince them that this is really in line with our mission as a university. So that's number one. And So, long story short, I actually spent my sabbatical doing it so that I can focus on running the spin off. But we need. That's why I go back to that constraint innovation thinking, because all what I got from all of you is that there's constraints in our ability to succeed in technology transfer. Whether it's legal stuff, it's difficult, it takes too long, or whether it's policy that we need takes a lot of time. That's why we need a focusing mechanism. Focus on what is really the constraint of the system, so that you can achieve the outcomes. And in terms of outcome, it should be the global optimum. What will really achieve the overall outcome? And mind you, the outcome or the goal, ultimate goal, is not clear to everyone because each one has our own goals, right? Yeah, ako professor and researcher, I want to publish, I want to uh, get promoted, right? TTOs, the goal is to commercialize technology, have patents there, and sometimes linking the innovator or the technology with the market is not yet well established, right? Which should be the case kasi the overall goal is to transfer the technology, not to create patents only, but to transfer it for impact so that it will feed into the innovation ecosystem, put more like funds into improving the technology. So my takeaway here is that all of this can be solved if we just focus on that one key constraint that's limiting our throughput uh, in terms of technology transfer.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nestor Tiglao, for that a very siguro sir meaty, malaman po yung inyong ano sir insight regarding ano sir yung ano on the other side of the fence naman sir. Speaking from the other side of the fence. Thank you sir. So for the second question naman po for our panelists sir no. Sirs, what is or what are your advices for our aspirants who are planning and going through the process of their IP commercialization, for their technology commercialization? Siguro sir, same sequence po tayo no sir. Doc John.
Parang first in, first out tayo. Parang queue. On the serious side, again, 3 points lang siguro. I don't want to dwell on too many things. Parang, if we want to prioritize, siguro yung first advice ko is that if the aspirant is unsure of whether or not to pursue commercialization, my first advice is to have bias or preference for commercializing. So yun kasi you'll really, at least from the experience of the people that we've helped commercialize their technologies, you really learn a lot. No, you become better persons, better researchers even. No? Because you are more in touch of what's really needed by the society. No? So parang as Doc Nestor mentioned, your research becomes more relevant. No? Hindi sa basta ano lang for publication sake. Because now, you are, in your attempt to commercialize your technology, then you become aware of what's really necessary or what's really needed outside. No? So yun. So again, the first one is if you are in doubt, if you are unsure whether to commercialize or not, my first suggestion is to go for it, no? To try commercialization. And second, and I would also refer to the experience of Doc Nestor, no? Parang it took parang them several years, many iterations. Siguro one way to shortcut that is to find a good mentor. So yun, parang if you have a good mentor, kasi mahirap pag learning, parang playing by ear, learning things from scratch, no? Essentially, you would, although the learning would be meaningful also, but it will be inefficient. Parang there are already experts out there who are even willing to share their experience, expertise, no? And in fact, help you build your network. No? So if you do pursue commercialization, it will be very strategic if you're able to look for a mentor. And in fact, I feel that's one of the main roles of our tech transfer office, no? Because we imagine that the researchers are inexperienced in the realm of business and enterprises. It should be at least one of our goals is to somehow provide a mechanism, if not directly our mentor, no, a mechanism for mentorship, no. But we have to be as TTO, we have to be parang sort of forgiving with our own limitations because it does take time to build that network, to build more mentors. But if you want to be strategic, it would be good for aspirants to actually have their own mentors. No? And then yung third, what I feel is the most important parang idea or concept is that when you do decide to commercialize, you have to make sure that there's someone who will work on this full time. Hindi pwedeng half time, hindi pwedeng part time na after you do your teaching or you do your research, then you spend a few hours on this. That generally that will not work. It doesn't have to be you directly as a researcher, no. It can be someone that can be parang a trusted person or even an employee, but there has to be someone who will work on this on a full-time basis. Otherwise, kasi you lose momentum and you don't have the focus necessary to make it succeed, no. If it was very easy to commercialize things, then there will be a lot of success stories, no. But the fact of the matter is, it's really difficult, and you really have to spend your time, effort, you have to come up with innovations to make it successful, no. So parang I guess those are the three things. Parang decide to commercialize, look for a mentor, and then make sure there's someone full time. So, yun lang siguro Jerome. Hope that helps.
Sir, while we're on the topic, sir, of commercialization of IP for our starting for our aspirants, sir, maybe sir you can give us siguro sir a short success story, sir, of an an IP or a technology that you have successfully licensed through your technology transfer office, sir?
Sige, if okay lang parang ano, parang not so broad, okay lang. I won't
Yes,
give
sir.
the
Opo. Okay
baka
lang,
ano
sir.
kasi.
Kahit ano
So
lang po.
essentially, our first ever licensee or is a health record system. It's a electronic medical record system. No? This one was actually developed through a grant from an third party. Hindi sa DOST, hindi government. No? It's actually a grant from some big company which I would not name kasi baka may confidentiality stuff. No? And then uh, towards the end of the project, they were trying to already yung pain point nila, they were looking for additional funds to help develop more features, no. But the company parang did not prioritize this in a sense, no. And so the researchers wanted to make sure that the product which has been offered already to some LGUs, that the product will persist, will continue, can be self-sustained, no. So they eventually asked the permission, although it's a ano naman parang it's a donation already to the university. So essentially, in principle, we could have done what we wanted to with it. No? But essentially, siyempre, for courtesy, we asked the permission of that company. Tapos yun nga, they didn't want to bring this to commercialization further. So nangyari, naghanap kami ng parang isa pang party. A third party would be interested. And we found one who was very, very eager to be the licensee. But the problem is, they were leveraging on developing also on cryptocurrency. So parang they wanted something like an parang an IPO for their coins, no. And there were some problems along the way. So eventually, to cut the long story short, si researcher, because they were already under pressure to make it self-sustaining. Sa yung sabi ni Doc Nestor, iba talaga pag mayroong clear constraint, di ba? Parang you have to make sure that mas sustain siya kasi otherwise yung mga LGUs who are depending on this, who are using the system, will somehow have to break that or have to let go of this, no, have to stop using it, no. So they decided to eventually do their own parang spin-off company, and in that case we help them develop, help them create their own spin-off, and then we help them look for some parang initial market, no. And then minsan kasi yun ang crucial pag may nakuha ka ng initial market, then you become more confident and you can this can snowball, and then you'll get more and more clients and so on, diba? And then yung happy news siguro is so we license it out to them to their own spin-off last year. Tapos a couple of weeks ago, mga 3 weeks ago, we had the first parang royalties, no. So kumbaga as in may return na dun na sa university and to the inventors themselves, no. And the good news is because there's now a proof of concept that this system will work, it became easier for us also to pitch to the administrator to consider programs that will help incentivize this further. Dati ang hirap i-convince ang administrator kasi it's a cost to them, di ba? But now, since there's an actual sort of a clear path towards return of investments in a sense, then it becomes easier for the administration to consider yung mga different schemes that we are parang proposing to them, no. Anyway, so yun ang first namin na it's actually a software-based system, and it has kung baga kaya naman, pwede namang kuha ng returns from doing that. And the better thing actually is that yung system nila hindi nag-stop yung pagsaserve, because now they're able to fund their own operations, then it's able to continue serving the LGUs that and other new customers, in fact. Anyway, so yun
Thank
lang,
you.
Jerome.
Thank you po, Doc John, for sharing your success story, sir, and your advice to our aspiring IP commercialization. Congratulations, sir, for your success in the licensing, sir, of the technology, sir. And nakakatulong siya sa mga LGU natin, sir. No? So next po si Sir Stephen from MSU, sir. Good
Yeah.
afternoon po ulit, sir.
Yun again. Yeah, on our case, I just remembered yung one talk ko. I dubbed it as a take the leap or the leap, which is yung LEAP. Parang ginawang emblem lang siya na if we started with letter L, which is just to learn and listen. I think importante kasi we listen on both parties kung anong concern and anong kailangan, and then we can find a ground where we can start on together. And then after we listen to them, we try to engage the team. Pero yung medyo nakakatakot sa pag-engage is we have a lot of apprehensions. Tatanggapin ba? Okay ba sa kanila? But if ganito yung tanong, anong dapat isasagot? Paano, like we have a lot of those arguments. And then after we engage them, we go back to the office and then we argue. And then we agree kung ano kailangan i-agree. So on that case, yeah, if you remembered, nagsisigawan na yung mga tao and then mga team namin. So parang if some people would pass by the office and they will hear us shouting, would even think like, baka isipin nila nag-aaway na tayo dito. But that's a process of how we deliberate. Kasi minsan, we have to raise the voice para ma-stress yung point. Tapos paano mo, but it's for me, I consider it as an informative or intellectual discourse. Kasi dapat grounded yung argument mo before mo i-present. Walang bias at saka walang consideration. And then after we argue, we prepare again kung anong mga kailangan na documents. So on that level, on our end, everything is medyo klaro na kung anong gusto namin, na-try na namin. Because I think in the technology transfer office, I think all of us would agree na we need to have a front that open tayo for changes, open tayo for innovation, at hindi tayo close. Kasi the moment we close our door, lahat licensor or licensee matatakot lumapit. So if in some cases wala nang time limit, so kahit gabi pwedeng mag-meeting, kahit maagang umaga rather, mag-meeting, pagtatawag, mag-i-consult. So talagang open yung communication lines natin. And I also, one consideration is if na-appreciate ko yung sa efforts in terms of the OST's support to uplift the ecosystem, sa innovation ecosystem natin. Like, we can easily tap on experts, we can tap on universities, and we can tap on potential mentors kung anong kailangan. So, I remembered in some cases, parang naging open lines of communication with other institutions. Anong gagawin natin if ganitong licensing style yung ginagamit? So, we have that certain connection. So, in terms of numbers, easily pwede nang tumawag para mag-inquire. And in the case ng campus namin, or in the case sa MCIT, on our technology transfer office, dalawa kasi siya. One is on the technology transfer, and the other one is on the legal aspect. So, during the meeting namin, ibang perspective kasi on the legal, di ba, sir? Ibang perspective din sa technology transfer lang. Kasi on the market side and on the legal side. So once we meet, talagang titingnan namin, so if we do this, is it okay in the legal aspect? Or in the legal aspect, is it okay in the market aspect? So those type of argument. So yung strategy namin is, we intend to meet first, na wala yung licensee at saka yung inventor. Yun yung strategy namin. Diba? So after that one, pag na-finalize na namin, then we present sa inventor if it's okay nasa kanila. So once it's done, another level na naman yung the moment nandun na yung licensor, yung company na magla-license, tapos another argument or another deliberation na naman until such time na ma-finalize yung agreement namin or licensing agreement namin. I remembered for the success story, we have one on the biomedical field. Matagal yung deliberation namin on that. So I think matagal yung process for coming up with an agreement or yung term sheet. We even have a lot of options, plan A, plan B, plan C. Tapos the moment na mag-meeting na, they also have their IP lawyers coming in to check on the documents. So we prepare again, and then we discuss kung anong possible terms na mangyayari. And I think ang importante is like we go back again with the leap which I made mention. Kailangan open lang yung communication lines. Because some cases, ibang perspective kasi the moment you license because they consider on the business side na talaga. On our case, we consider on the transferring of the technology. So finding the balance between the two would matter on how we communicate with each other and how we listen. And I think ang importante is the moment you have a successful or like anyone has a successful agreement, we always consider the partner, we always consider the licensee or the company as a partner for innovation. So if my request hanggat kaya, then we provide it because anyway, whatever growth or projects coming next after, mas madali kang mag-tap, mas madali maging example for success story as what Sir John also made mention. So mas madali na yung negotiation, mas madali yung partnership, at saka mas madaling kausap na pag naging partner mo na sila. So I think that is how the transfer office is working at.
Thank you po, Sir Stephen, for that, for sharing with us your success story in your licensing, and sharing also your advice to our aspiring licensors. Sir. Next, sir, Sir Eros, would you like to share, sir, uh,
Yes,
an
yes, yes. Thank you,
advice,
Jerome.
sir, for our aspirants who are planning for their technology commercialization? And also, sir, success story na rin, sir. Thank you, sir.
So, in terms of advice, siguro dalawang advice yung pwede kong dalawang aspect in terms of advice, no. One for us na technology transfer officers. Yung advice ko lalo ikaw, Jerome, di ba? You are leading the technology transfer with other our mga technology transfer officers sa Bulsu, no. Talagang really need to engage with people, no. Parang we establish connection, partnership, trust with our inventors. Kasi yun yung need natin ma-develop sa kanila kasi that's their technology, that's their intellectual property, and we are just telling them that you commercialize it. But if we don't have that connection, that trust that we build, mahirapan tayo na magpatuloy, no. But on the other side of the idea, no, pagdating naman sa mga inventors, mga professors, mga researchers, no, trust us. Parang we will do naman we will do things na will help you, know. We train people, we establish this process, and we will help you as much as possible, and para matuloy natin yung commercialization process. Lalo, I think sa amin sa Bulacan State University, we're still need to up our game in terms of commercialization. We have not yet seen a really success stories in terms of our technology in Bulacan State. But I think we're going there, and with the help of the community, and I think malapit na naming ma-achieve yun. And in terms of success stories, siguro, Jerome, we call success stories na yung mga small success stories natin sa office natin. Like, for example, we're already engaged with 24 technologies na we are trying to kumbaga ligaw na ituloy niya na siya sa commercialization, no. We are eyeing some technologies na nakikita namin na they are ready na for commercialization, but there's still some kumbaga things that we need to iron out in terms of the legal aspect, in terms of the commercialization, in terms of the business side, no. But we already look at it as a success because parang sa ngayon at least nakita na namin na there is a technology pala in our university na we can pursue, na kagaya ng halimbawa na pwede naman pala nating imapakita, ma-market yung mga technology natin sa Bulacan State University. And hopefully, by the help of this community, no, sa tulong niyo po, Sir John, Sir Stephen, Sir Nestor, and all of the community in the Philippines, is magkatulong-tulong tayo na in terms of technology transfer. Jerome, thank you for that question. No?
Thank you, sir. Siguro, sir, yung mga success stories, sir, would include also small wins, no, sir, in our field, in our industry, sir. No? Not just yung mga yung mga big achievements, no, sir, yun.
Sa atin sa ngayon, no, we consider it different kasi we are just trying to get that to point
Yes,
na
okay.
Pero I think importante talaga na kahit small wins is a celebrate kasi it motivates people to work
Yes,
better.
sir, Stephen. It's kind of a motivation for us.
At saka pag may
So
food din, we can convene easily. So yun, pag may small
Right.
wins, and let's gather and then let's talk about it. And then along that line, if a plan on what is next. So a little step bigger na naman from the small win we have. So I think yun yung kailangan.
Tama, sir.
tama po. Yes, sir. So thank you po no Sir Eros, Sir Stephen for sharing. Of course our keynote speaker po Dr. Nestor Tiglao. Any insights sir or sharing of some success stories sir to the panel and to our audience sir.
Yeah. Uh, thanks. Actually, I echo yung the concept of celebrating your wins. No? Pero also to succeed in this game, I think we should uh, think big, aim high. Because if you technology transfer is just one part of the equation. Once you transfer it, will it be successful or will it scale so that you achieve your outcome, whether it's societal impact, changing lives so that it's better, and overall economic development. So I think if we have a big picture idea of yung goals, of course there are like metrics that we use. For example, number of patents submitted and approved, number of licenses, number of spin-offs. They're good metrics, but what is really the outcome? And it should be clear if we can. I agree if we can parang uh, be concerted in our effort, work as a team, so that we have clear goals and outcomes. And then in terms of yung pain points kasi, once the once you actually go into technology commercialization, you will see that, and it is a wake up call for me. You have a great idea at the start, but when you subject that to market scrutiny, you will sometimes you get disheartened kasi hindi pala kaya ng technology mo. Whether kaya niya, but it will only address a simple, a few feature set. Pero iba pala yung gusto actually ng market. Saka the question there is at what speed and what price can I achieve yung ano, gusto ng market? Which is really you really need constraint thinking here. Kasi you don't, number one, you don't have a lot of budget. And then number two, you don't have a lot of time. Kasi if you like solve a problem and innovate, okay, I'll come up with version 2 1 year from now. By that time, wala na, you will be out of the competition already because there are already companies already entrenched, already incumbent, and they have like 6 months come up with a new version. And then once they bring that out to the market, continue, they have parallel teams, they can push another product to the market. They're doing sustaining innovation. So I think what we have to be parang focused and strategic about the technology that we really want to commercialize, and also yung aspirations ng innovator and researcher is really key because they will have to solve the limitations of the system. So if they're not really uh, incentivized properly or motivated to solve that, they will not join. They will not put in the effort uh, to solve those problems. But it really starts with, and that's why in the role of TTO, I mentioned it in the first few slides. There should be the free flow of information between the academe, the innovators, and the outside world. Kasi kung alam mo na from the start, you already have an insight what they want, then you don't really need to do a lot of parang effort that are not effective and efficient. So if you know what is really needed, then you can really pinpoint that you have parang almost like a uh, parang a target that you really know for sure. And then you also in talking with the market, you also ask them like how important is that problem to you? Uh, will you actually pay for a solution like this? Kasi those are the questions that technology generators don't ask, right? I just want to build my own research. I can prove that it works, the science and the engineering. But if you talk to some people who will receive it as a service or a product, then you have to answer those questions. Um, but in terms of the success story, since I would not consider myself or our company yet as a success story, but I would say we're learning a lot. It's a learning story. You really have to have growth mindset in this field, because otherwise, if you encounter one failure, uh, you will be disheartened and you will not push push on. But in the innovation game, it's really trying, trying, and trying. You cannot get it in one go. That's for sure. Because uh, innovators, there's always a lot of innovators say that they tried 10 times, 100 times, a million, 1,000 times to make it work, and then only one. Actually, you just need one time to succeed and make it big. But along the way, you will have a lot of uh, lessons learned, a lot of failures that you learn from.
Okay. Thank you po, sir. Dr. Nestor, for sharing with us your insights regarding your advice to our aspiring IP licensors, and sharing also your success stories, Dr. Nestor. Siguro, Doc, nag-stick lang talaga sa akin po kanina yung ano nyo, sir, sa talk nyo po yung build something that people want
Yeah.
and put the customer first, not the technology or the product, and also target the jobs to be done.
Mhm.
Yun po, Doc, yung nag-stick sa akin. So parang for the technology to be successful, you must first and foremost, parang focus on what jobs are supposed to be done for that technology to be used by the customer siguro po, Doc. Parang ganun. Kaya,
Yes,
yan.
yeah, correct, Jerome. Kasi any product or service will have a competitor. Uh, it could be a direct competitor or it could be an indirect competitor. So if you don't engage with that at the onset, it will be difficult to push that into a market and look for customers who will buy it and who will love it. Kasi, eh, kasi if there are no customers, you don't have a business. You don't have a successful transfer. So, but it's critical to engage in the conversation. Ano ba 'to yung kailangan talaga ng market? And who are our competitors? Can we be 10 times better than what they offer? So it's not enough just to pantayan mo lang sila because they're already there. So pag pinantayan mo sila, they will bring down the cost so low na hindi ka na competitive. So if
Opo.
you think 10 times, so one order of magnitude higher, you're better in terms of features, and then you can bring the cost lower, and at the same time solve the job to be done. Then you have a winning formula. Otherwise, it will be difficult to sell your technology.
Thank you so much, Doc, for that additional insight po. And also to our panelists po, kung pwede na po ako mag-duplicate ng tao tapos mag-a-applause po ako sa inyo. Thank you so much po for sharing all your insights to us and to our audience. Um, Siguro po, I would give the floor to our office head of the Bulacan State University Lawin Technology Transfer Utilization Services Office, Mr. Eros Lumage, for a few words to close our program. Sir Eros?
Salamat po sa ating lahat. No? I would just like to take this opportunity to thank everybody no na ginagawa tong activity natin this afternoon, to all of us, Sir John, Sir Nestor, Sir Stephen, the Lawin team, and syempre the QBO Innovation, and the whole idea of the Philippine Startup Week. No, I really miss the Philippine Startup Week. No, parang every year inaabangan ko to. No, parang ito na yung mga activities na naman na mabubuhay na naman yung dugo ng mga innovators. No? But as we can see, no, this is the avenue for us to learn, to meet new inventors, to meet new mentors na in this arena, and we really are in gratitude with this kind of event. On behalf of Bulacan State University, we thank you for this opportunity. Salamat, salamat.
Thank you so much, Sir Erus. So that concludes our um, program for today. Thank you so much to our keynote speaker, Dr. Nestor Tiglao, our panelists. Dr. Nestor, salamat po. Maraming salamat, sir.
Thank you, Jerome, and thanks to the BUSO team.
Thank you, sir. Marami din pong salamat sa ating pong panelists, Sir Stephen Fardo from MSU IIT. Sir, thank you so
Thank you
much.
din.
Salamat po sa pagpapaunlak.
Salamat din for invite.
Thank you po. God bless, sir. Of course, Doc John Fernandez from the Ateneo de Manila University. Sir, maraming salamat po. Thank
Thank
you,
you,
sir,
Jerome,
for
and good luck.
coming.
Good luck sa mga
Thank you, sir.
efforts to commercialize your technologies.
Thank you, sir. More power po. More power po sa lahat po ng ating mga panelists and our keynote speaker. QBO, maraming salamat. More power. And thank you po sa Philippine Startup Week 2021 for having us in this program. God bless everyone and thank you. Have a great day.